when someone volunteers to become subject to the jurisdiction of some other authority, that person has no right to any information whatsoever other than what their master might choose to tell them. It's important to understand what it means when you are in a condition of servitude. You have no rights, and people on this call, on the Iron Russo call rather, are talking about their First Amendment rights. They have no such thing as any First Amendment rights. They have no rights whatsoever. They need to read the Constitution and read the first 10 amendments and look at the word person. Excuse me, I misspoke. The word people. The people's right, like the Second Amendment, the people's right to keep and bear arms.
Yeah, I got a copy right here.
Well, if you read the Second Amendment, it says the people's right to keep and bear arms. It does not say the citizens' right. Citizens of the United States have absolutely no right to keep and bear arms. And if you read the First Amendment, it'll say Congress shall make no law to regard to freedom of speech, freedom of the press, or freedom of religion, and then it'll change and it'll say the people's right to redress of grievance. It's only the people who have that right, and the lawsuit that We the People lawsuit. I told them when they first filed it, I contacted them. I said, "You will never win this lawsuit. You don't have a chance of winning it because you don't even understand the First Amendment. You do not have any right to redress because of what have they got? What, 4,000 plaintiffs? They're all citizens of the United States, every one of them.
I know it.
Don't have a chance of winning
that kills it right there.
Based on what is the political status of the plaintiffs. And they don't understand it. They don't want to listen. They don't want to hear it. We have this right here. No, I'm sorry, you don't have it.
Well, according to the IRS and their definitions, they don't even add up to the United States. If you don't even come under the jurisdiction of the IRS unless you live in Washington, D.C. or one of its
territories. I'm sorry, but that's not true. That's not true.
Why is that
Every citizen of the United States, you see, when you're a citizen of the United States, you have agreed to be subject to the jurisdiction of the United States no matter where you may be located. You agreed to be subject to the jurisdiction of the United States as soon as you claim. So all this stuff that you just said is nothing but patriot gibberish. Wishful thinking on the parts of people who don't understand the 14th Amendment.
Well, what about this OMB stuff?
It's all nothing but gibberish because citizens of the United States don't have any rights whatsoever. So the IRS and the courts play these little games with this stuff in order to make it look like people have rights, and they'll let somebody win here, and they'll let somebody win there on some little minor point in order to keep everything obfuscated. It's a matter of basic understanding. 6 words: government does not exist in nature. And so, therefore, the government cannot have any jurisdiction over anyone unless they volunteer. So whether there's an OMB number or anything else, none of that makes any difference. If you haven't voluntarily joined the Boy Scouts, then the Boy Scout master doesn't get to tell you anything, does he?
No, he doesn't. And I haven't voluntarily.
So if you haven't joined the United States, you remember that lawsuit, that case I read here to you about a half an hour ago?
Yes.
They have no jurisdiction over you unless you volunteer in. So OMB numbers and all this other stuff don't ever make any difference. Why even bother to mess with that stuff? Because as soon as you start using that stuff, you have acknowledged that you're under their jurisdiction. Why else are you using their rules? Your rules don't apply to me, so all I'm going to tell you is your rules don't apply to me. Don't tell me about any of your rules, because none of your rules make any difference.
I'm not a member of your organization.
That's right. I didn't volunteer in. And according to your own 13th Amendment, you don't have any ability to say that I did. I mean, there's no reason to even go into any of this stuff.
Neither slavery nor inviolence.
To make it so complicated because they don't start at a fundamental basis.
Article 13, Section 1.
So in other words, Congress can step in and tell the IRS where to go, huh? They could, if they wanted to.
Are you telling or asking?
Well, you
No, I'm asking.
Well, you don't need to do any of that because the writing and the enactment and the adoption of the 13th Amendment is not what made it so. Just that case that I read you was handed down in 1796.
Yes.
The 13th Amendment was adopted in 1866. 70 years later. So it doesn't see, it was already a fact.
Cruden versus Neal.
What?
Cruden versus Neal. 2N3C.
The 13th Amendment did not change anything. All it did was write down that which was already in effect. By nature.
Mm-hmm.
By nature. The case that you just read off refers to natural laws. Under nature, the government does not have any authority over someone who did not volunteer in. That's what that case says. So none of that stuff makes any difference. And you go to this, well, what about this? Well, what about that? Well, what about this? Well, what about that? All you do is roll it out. None of it makes any difference. All of the rule applies to all of their so-called rules. Their government does not exist in nature, therefore none of their rules can possibly apply to me. Unless I volunteered, and they got to prove I did, and they can't.